កម្មវិធីកិច្ចសន្ទនាកម្ពុជានិងពិភពលោក
Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Cambodia Global Dialogue of Southeast Asia TV. Tonight, as you can see, I have a big panel, and you wonder why, three people. I said, well, because the subject is quite big, it go all the way from the global perspective down to a micro level, and I thought it'd be good to have a good perspective, and we will be talking about renewable energy. And I have with me, three people who are, I would say, specialized in their own right, but I will not gonna go further than that. I would prefer to let them speak for themselves. So I'm gonna start with Nick. Perhaps you can say a bit about yourself, and UNDP, of course.
Yeah, sure. Jim Rupsor. My name is Nick Burrison. I'm country director here at UNDP in Cambodia. UNDP is involved in many environmental, many macroeconomic and other initiatives here in Cambodia, and our subject today,
yes.
Solar energy. This is one that's very close to our heart and one that we deal with in many of our offices around the world.
Yes.
Cambodia is no exception.
Good. Well, Dr. Bunlok.
Good morning. My name is Tin Punlok. I work as the Secretary General of the National Council for Sustainable Development. This is an interministerial body responsible for policy formulation related to sustainable development, including renewable energy.
Back to you.
My name is Bridget McIntosh. I'm the Director of Emerging Markets for Energy Lab. I have worked in renewable energy for the last 20 years, and our aim here in Cambodia in establishing Energy Lab is to facilitate the clean energy market in Cambodia, but also to support the growth of entrepreneurs and startup companies to bring innovation and opportunities for Cambodia in transforming and bringing investment in clean energy.
All right, that's a lot in one sentence. I would say, we talk about SDG, but much closer to home, when we just came back from the ASEAN Summit in Singapore, and previous month, there's so many other international conference, summit, but more than likely, the topic of climate change is there, more than likely, right? Of course, there are terrorism, there are, the Korean Peninsula, which is the talk of the day. But, every time there is a topic on the effect of climate change. And I think, some go further to say, okay, well, there are climate change issue, but what would be the solution, right? And of course, SDG is prominently there. I think by now people realize that, we have to have this, Agenda 2030, to tackle that, and renewable energy is a talk about that, right? And particularly, I'm about to go to Zurich to prepare the Asia-Europe Summit in the next several months, and we'll talk about partnership. But again, how to have this partnership to tackle climate change. And in there is technology, renewable energy. But perhaps I'll start with you, Nick, to set the stage a bit. How at the UN level, SDG, the UN is tackling this issue, and then later on, I will turn to Dr. Punlok because you are quite involved in the Paris Accord, not the Paris Peace Accord, but the Paris Climate Change Accord. Right. So, Nick, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Sabana. I think there are two main agreements here which are relevant. Of course, the SDGs that you mentioned, and the Paris Agreement. And I think that the central idea behind the SDGs is this concept of moving to sustainable development. It's moving away from a development model that got us very far, that did very well, but had a lot of costs, a lot of environmental costs. And it's looking at a cleaner, sharper, more efficient, more effective way of bringing that global prosperity to everybody. I mean, up to 2030, we could expect maybe another 4.5 billion middle-class consumers. Most of them, more than 60% of them, will be here in Asia.
Yes.
So, I mean, nothing could be more important to ASEAN, to this region. So, how do we affect that transition and make sure that transition, it works, it's effective, it's peaceful,
yes.
it's stable.
Yes.
And we have to look at it from many different angles. And one, of course, is the energy angle. How do we then build up an energy model within individual countries, within the region globally, that enables that transition, that brings these millions of people up to a stable and prosperous middle-class existence, but without destroying the planet that we live on.
Yes, indeed.
And that's really one of the central concepts in the SDGs, but also with the Paris Agreement,
yes.
To limit the greenhouse gas emissions and to find this way forward.
Well, I'm glad that 2 years ago, to be precise, right? The Cambodia delegation went to New York. The Minister of Environment went to sign, and this is some proud moment that Cambodia is quite active in the global scene nowadays, right? I mean, there's so many other things. We have the WTO. We have so many different global, for example, on the Apsara. Not many people know that we are leading in terms of cultural protection and preservation, right? But then here again, in this global arena in the area of environment, we are also taking a very proactive, role in being one of the signatory of the Paris Agreement. But what's your view on that?
Well, the government is very committed to addressing climate change. One of the reasons because Cambodia is a very vulnerable country to the impact of climate change because our economy still rely on agriculture. The risk of being inundated in the coastal area by sea level rise and so on. So we among the first country who signed the Paris Agreement, and Parliament ratified in late 2016.
Mm-hmm.
But again, Cambodia is still least developed country.
Yes.
We participate in global effort to address climate change on a voluntary basis, and provided the international community, especially industrialized country, give support to us. Finance, technology,
mm-hmm.
know-how. It's not just about to adapt to climate change, also to mitigate
yes.
greenhouse gases.
Yes.
It is one of the reasons why we also focus on renewable energy,
yes.
especially solar, hydro, to a lesser extent wind, because of the technical potential.
Yes.
Again, from a developing country perspective, it's not just about cutting emission. It's not just about reducing carbon dioxide emission. This technology, solar especially, it provide very clean energy. There's no also pollutant associated,
yes.
Sulfur or the air pollutant. Technology doesn't emit pollutant.
Yes.
It modern technologies. It provide jobs, investment as well. If we talk about manufacturing, to reduce the cost, and it become more competitive. When they invented the technology in the early 40s, the cost I think it was about $300 per watt capacity.
Yes. Now.
And now it's dropped to 0.3. And it's going down further.
In how many years was that? How many decades?
50, 60
wow,
years.
That's not bad. Yes.
Exponential.
Exponential, yes.
So technology itself become very competitive.
Yes.
So it's provide multiple benefits
yes.
to the country. Economy, environment, social,
yeah.
job, everything.
Look, I think you mentioned something very important for Cambodia because we have quite a young population. I call the reverse pyramid, right? Where we have more younger people, very hungry for knowledge, very, very adaptable to technology. And everybody have play PS4 game. So I tell my son, don't worry, just enjoy the game because it increases your mobility, your understanding. And you know what he say? He say, Dad, I'm not playing game. This is a strategy session here. We're 4 people in different part of the world. We're helping each other, how to tackle the bad guy, whatever. But basically what it is technology, right? So here I'm turning to you, Bridget, that, your organization is working with young people. They can be entrepreneur, they can be young software developer, whatever, right? It's about employment. It's about potential to unleash this energy, this use, this, tell me a bit about what your view on that.
Well, following on from what Wonlock was saying, that the cost of solar has dropped so significantly. When I moved to Cambodia in 2003, the cost of solar was $10 a watt, and now it's it's around 30 cents a watt. Significantly less than $1 a watt. So with the rapidly declining costs of solar, it brings a massive investment opportunity. So in China last year, $87 billion was invested in solar just in 1 year. And half of all the world's solar was built in China last year. That is also being played out in Thailand and Vietnam. Yes. And you have countries like California where 10% of their electricity over a year is supplied from solar power. And in fact, on the 5th of March this year, 50% of California's electricity was supplied by solar on one day. So over a year, it's 10%. Yes. So there is a significant opportunity. The cost of solar is now competitive in many countries with building new coal or building new fossil fuel technologies. So with that opportunity comes the need for managing how you deal with variable renewable supply. Yeah. Because we know that the sun doesn't always shine, but we also know that you don't get power at night time. So with the rapidly declining costs of storage technology, we have an opportunity to manage distributed energy resources across the grid. And that's when you get the opportunity of combining technology, like ICT technology, with the renewable energy, solar technology.
Bridget, I'm gonna cut you short because we have to take a short break, but I'll give you back the floor when we're back.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so have you water a bit. So far so good. See, 1/3 is done already. All right, Bridget, go on.
So with the rapidly declining costs of solar and information technologies, we have new innovative business models. So pay-as-you-go solar is one of those innovative business models that allows customers to pay off their solar system and allows investor certainty. So the investor can pay for the system and then the customer can pay it off as they go using mobile technology.
Yes.
There's also what's called virtual power plants where you can make, say, 1,000 or 10,000 solar home systems act in concert together to act as big as a medium-sized power station. So if you have an event where it's looking like we're short on power, you can combine those together to provide power into the grid and provide some of that stability. There are a lot of innovations that are happening around electricity as we're seeing it shift from a centralized model into a decentralized model across the energy system.
Well, Bridget, I that's good. There's a lot of business model, but to me, I'm back to Ponlok that from the policy perspective, of course, the government is keen for that. But when we talk about industry requires quality, energy. By that I mean to power the big machine, the big plant, right? So how is the interlinkage with the regular grid? My understanding is that when you have renewable energy produced, you have to feed back to the grid. But do we have a clear policy as to how this will work, for example?
At this stage, I think this short regulation issued by Electricity Authority of Cambodia, which require a potential user who wants to install solar system to request for kind of permission from them.
Okay.
So there's no comprehensive
Yes.
regulation. We don't have feed-in tariff or net metering in place yet.
Not yet.
But
You expect it will be coming?
it will come one day.
Okay.
I think a proper assessment need to be done.
Yes.
We need to understand better the technical potential of
Yes.
our resources,
Yes.
solar especially, and also the economy of solar technology in Cambodia as well. Say comparing with if we decide to use the land for installation of solar,
Yes.
what about other opportunity costs?
Yes.
So this have to be taken into account. The existing key player, like existing power purchase agreement
Yes.
with the thermal power plants,
Yes.
need to be taken into account.
Yes.
So it's not straightforward. It's not just about technology.
Yes.
It's politics here. It's economy. It's environment. It's social. So in brief, I think it's important to have very comprehensive assessment.
Yes.
And then of course look how best can we improve the
Yes.
enabling environment.
Yes.
The standard,
Yes.
legislation,
Yeah.
policy, of course, maybe economic tools,
Yes, yes.
tax
Yes.
policy, funds, support, and so on.
Yeah, so I think, Flo, I'll get back to you on this later, but I want to go back to Nick because, Nick, I mean, UNDP, what we talk, it's a lot to do with the economy of scale, large production, the sort of thing, but, not every Cambodian live in this big city. Not everybody have access to the grid. UNDP, you work quite a bit with rural electrification. Many people in remote area would never have a transmission line to get there. They use a battery to. But it's interesting nowadays. You go to countryside, Monokari, Ratnakari, you see TV and antenna, something like this. So something is happening at the rural level. What is UNDP work on that? In terms of rural electrification, with no access to grid.
Well, I mean, like the government itself, UN, UNDP, we're all committed to this idea of no one left behind. That everybody gets to benefit
Yes.
from the power and the prosperity. So that's our kind of starting point, if you like. We know, practically speaking, that because of the topography, the geography, there may be certain communities who may never get onto the grid or be very late. Even by 2030, we might estimate 20% of users might be off grid. I mean, for instance, on the islands and so on.
Yeah.
So we have to find solutions for them. The good news is, I think, as Bridget and Dr. Ponlok were saying, we're seeing this wave of new technology coming through.
Yes.
So we can ride this wave. We can anticipate there's going to be continuing benefits, more innovative models, more decentralized models, and so on. And this provides good solutions, I think, for those communities. And then we can see much less of an us and them, much more of a holistic approach to power and to energy that involves grid, that involves off-grid, but has good coordination. I think Dr. Punlok's absolutely right. At the heart of it, the most important thing is good policy, government-owned policy, and also policy that looks holistically. It considers the social, it considers the economic, it considers the effects on private business and so on and so forth, and then comes up with sensible regulations that are suitable to the context here in Cambodia.
Yes.
But my point is, I think there's a lot of opportunity for the off-grid.
Yes.
We're already seeing a lot of success, so we already have a lot of experience. We have some great startups here. We have some really interesting players in the private sector already working there. So I think if we look at that dynamic private sector that we've got this young, prosperous economy, and we've got a government committed to looking at the best solutions in terms of energy and addressing climate change. There's a great policy opportunity there.
I see, for me, having sort of monitored the last 20-some years of Cambodia development, right? We see a lot of opportunity for catching up in many areas. Like now you're talking about fintech, right? You have a lot of these young Cambodians who are really embracing that. The fourth industrial revolution, now the idea start at the big level, but you see a lot of the young Cambodia embracing. And in the renewable energy, I see that is the next area that it will be quick takeoff. Like you say, if the cost of technology is down, the spirit of entrepreneurship is there. But Log, you probably can agree with me that we have many young Cambodians who have studied abroad, are coming back now. Our university, ITC, for example, the Kurum Institute, they are producing a lot of young, good technicians. I think the element for a growth is there, because the way I see, right, if you have electricity in a home in Mondulkiri, right, the kids can read at night. You know, they can charge a smartphone, and with a smartphone, they could have access to internet, to knowledge. It's amazing the impact of energy. You know, what do you think of that, Bridget?
I agree, absolutely. And there are new technologies and new business models coming. So, for example, there's a startup here in Cambodia called Okra Solar, and they provide a control box that allows homes that have solar home systems with a home that doesn't have a solar home system to share the power and so on and so forth.
Wow.
So it's smart management of electricity sharing from solar. So what that allows them to do, customers to do, is use more power than what's limited within their battery. You also have, say, a distributor up in Kampong Chhnang that is running a diesel genset to supply power to that electricity grid. There is a chance now to add, say, 200 kilowatts of solar onto that to lower the cost of electricity to customers. Because ultimately in Cambodia, this is where we need to go, is reducing the cost of electricity, and solar allows that. There's also a distribution network in Kampong Cham that's added a megawatt of solar, and they're buying the solar cheaper than they're currently getting it, so that they can provide power to their customers for cheaper. And it's investment. It's all private investment. You've got Coca-Cola that's installed 2.3 megawatts on their roof.
ISPP also.
ISPP, Shaco, Angkor Dairy, ISI Steel. There are a lot of private investment that's not related to any subsidies. It's all private investment. And as Dr. Pollock mentioned, it's around the regulatory certainty that will allow investors to come. So the prakas that EAC introduced in January, and then the pricing disclosure that they released last week really helps, so that investors know where they stand. So that's for medium voltage and high voltage. Now what would be great is if we could get the same in place for low voltage, so that we can work out, for example, for households, whether a house wants to install a solar home system. And then, you know, we can work towards policies around feed-in tariffs. At the moment, we're not there yet. And Thailand did the same thing. Thailand started by saying, okay, we'll have a target of 100 megawatts of self-consumption, which means that you can put solar on a roof and you can use it, but you can't export it to the grid. And now Thailand's just changing that policy to allow for a feed-in tariff or a net metering arrangement. Vietnam also has a net metering arrangement, but these are new. And as Dr. Ponlot said, it's important to go step by step and test a small amount so that everyone, EDC, EAC, customers, can be certain about where things will go.
I mean, this is where I see public and private partnership, right? And Polok would agree with me that this government is very open in terms of reaching out to new ideas, working with the private sector. We have very dynamic exchange with the development partner. I mean, this is something that I'm quite, I would say, upbeat about this openness, right? And that's probably that very spirit openness that enable Cambodia to grow so fast, you know. Many times I have overseas people that come and ask about very complex issue, you know, very technical. I say, look, we're not in London, we're not in, I would say, Sydney or Paris, right? A lot of things that you all take for granted, we're still experimenting. It's still very novel to us, but we're willing to listen. You know, what can we learn from your particular experience? And that's probably why Cambodia is very good at emulating, right? Sometimes a bit too much, you know, we copy each other too much. But what do you think of this public-private sector partnership?
Well, I think this is a key factor to promote technology, to promote new investment. The government, of course, provide all the policy, the assessment, but it's the private sector who is the key driver, or who invests, because but we need to provide evidence, that they will make money.
Yes.
This is important for them.
Yes.
So the proper assessment that produce, very solid evidence, economic, environment, social, climate, and so on. It's important for engaging the private sector.
Yes.
They would not risk, if they see that they don't get more from the business as usual scenario. Yes. And we have learned that lesson from the previous round of implementation of the so-called Kyoto Protocol.
Yes.
When developing country can implement greenhouse mitigation projects and also sell the carbon credit generated from the project to the international market. So we lobbied the private sector to implement. They quite a number of them started the project, but then the carbon price collapsed. So they're in trouble. So this is very bad lesson for them. So I think proper assessment, very vigorous, very reliable assessment is important for them. If they are about to fail, they need to fail very safe.
Yes.
It cannot be worse than business as usual.
Yes, yes.
And this also refer to international community commitment, especially commitment from industrialized countries. Either funding, technology transfer, proper pricing of carbon and so on. All these external factors so can help promote investment in this clean technology in Cambodia.
Good. We're going to take a short break, final break. When we come back, Nick, I will want you to maybe tackle a bit where are we now on the SDG, and then I'll turn to Dr. Punlok for where are we now on the implementation of the Paris Agreement. All right? We'll take another break. Well, Nick, we have a new UN Secretary General. I was at the Boao Forum a couple of weeks ago. He made a very good speech, linking to the Belt and Road and everything, the current, sort of like the concern of a potential US-China trade war, the larger issue which have a direct impact on, the implementation of the SDG, right? One hope it will not get that far. President Trump have sent his emissary already to China to negotiate, So, when we use the word negotiate, it's a good sign that, people are, trading horses. But from our UN SDG perspective, the 2030 development agenda, still new, but are we on track? Any challenge that you can share with us?
Well, we've certainly had a good history, because if you look at the Millennium Development Goals, Cambodia was a superstar.
Yes.
I mean, it achieved number one, the halving of poverty, years ahead of the target.
Yes.
It's had tremendous economic growth driven by this dynamic private sector. The government has very successfully helped bring that about. But it's also been very inclusive. So it's not just a large amount of economic growth. It's also many people coming out of poverty. Poverty more than halved in the past 10, 15 years, as well as the economy tripling in size. So I think taking that successful model forward into the SDGs, we're very well placed. The Cambodian Sustainable Development Goals are just being written right now in conjunction with the rectangular strategy.
Yes.
The government's added an 18th sustainable goal on demining.
Yes, yes.
So I think there's real commitment there. There's a history of success. So I think that we have good grounds to be optimistic going forward.
That's very good. Speaking of demining, we become Cambodia become a sort of a regional player now. We have this ASEAN Regional Mine Center, Action Center. That's where in ASEAN people come to learn from us. So it's quite interesting that we flip a crisis, a country that have so many unexplored mines, you know, now we become the expert in the mining. You know, I think we have more than a few thousand. I forgot the number. A few thousand of our, you know, Cambodian UN peacekeeper.
Nearly 5,000.
Nearly 5,000
Between
now.
2006 and now, I think
Yes.
it's nearly 5,000
Nearly 5,000.
Cambodian
Yes.
from the Royal Army served in the
serving the blue, blue helmet or the blue beret, right? It's quite something to be proud of that we are now a contributor to the world in terms of peacekeeping, that sort of thing. So I'm quite happy, you know. We've been able to receive, but now we're in position to give. Look, on the climate change, you know, I read, I do follow regularly, you know, the discussion, you know, on the climate change. So where are we now?
As you know, we signed the Paris Agreement a couple
Yes.
of years ago, and then the Parliament ratified. Our permanent representative deposited the instrument of accession in early 2017. So
Yes.
the Paris Agreement is in force for
Yes.
Cambodia. So we implement this agreement through a document called nationally determined contributions. You know.
Yes.
It is a document that summarizes government plan, policies related to climate change, and it's cover both mitigation and adaptation. You know. At the national level, we have Cambodia strategic development plan,
Yes.
which also include climate change extensively for all sectors.
Okay.
And then the climate change strategic action plans for the next 10 years up to 2023.
Yes.
Based on that, line ministries, 14 line ministries have developed their climate change action plan, which is an actual activities related to climate change, both mitigation and adaptations. So we are on good track. We are developing a monitoring and evaluation framework to check the progress or issues or challenges that related to implementation of our commitment. But I want to highlight here, you know, Cambodia is a developing country,
Yes.
and implementations of mitigation activities is on a voluntary basis.
Yes, yes.
And provided that we receive support also from international community, either finance or technologies, you know. And we have done a rough estimation that you know how much we need.
Yes, wow.
So by 2020s, we need around 1.8 billion US dollar.
You mean in 2 years' time?
Yes, to implement all the plans.
Wow.
Yes, so it's important. But also I want to highlight that the government also increased the climate finance as well. If you look at the statistics from the Ministry of Economy
Yes,
and
the
Finance,
budget.
the budget, yes, I think the budget for climate relevant project has also increased. So this also indicates that we are not just waiting for funds
Yes,
from
yes.
you know, international community. We use our domestic funding
Yes.
as well to implement those actions.
Yes. Well, that's good. I mean, and I would say it's not going to be tomorrow that we'll solve this world problem. But the main thing is that we're on track, you know. And then it's sort of like a rolling plan, you know. You know, by 2020 we will have you know, some other activity. And you know, Bridget, you know, you mentioned that the pace of technological advancement is so fast that what you plan for a few years from now may become obsolete. Then there'll be other things that will change the course of this implementation aspect of it. But on the private sector, on the civil society side, what do you foresee the next several years, taking into account this dynamic, you know, evolution of technology, the dramatic reduction of costs? You know, how do you see, we as Punlok said, we are still a developing country. You know, as we move up the ladder of from a lower middle income country to a eventually will be a middle income country, but we are now still at the lower middle income country. But the effect of aid, of development aid, will be diminished as we economically grow, right? So I see some moving out, but some moving in. Donor may be moving out to other area, but the role of entrepreneurship, the role of private sector, the role of civil society are taking a larger space.
I agree, absolutely. And what we see is that the ultimate objective is to reduce the cost of power so that Cambodia's economy can grow. Power is still quite expensive, and for industry that makes it difficult. And EDC and the government of Cambodia are working very hard to reduce the tariffs. And what we need to make sure is that EDC and the government makes a return on investment of the incredible transmission and distribution network that they have set up in Cambodia, where now 80% of villages across Cambodia has access to electricity. That is amazing. We also need to make sure that the energy generators and the agreements that have been signed can be honoured. But with the rapid growth of electricity demand, we can see renewable energy and clean energy supply a lot of that power. And the benefit of particularly solar power is that it can be done incrementally, so small amounts, so you can add, say, 20, 50, 100, 200 megawatts quite quickly to build it. It can actually take sort of 3 months to build.
Yes.
And then as demand grows, you can supply that power. But it's not just about supply, it's also about managing resources across the system. Energy efficiency is actually the cheapest way to reduce energy costs. And you have innovative business models like Green Yellow here in Cambodia, which will invest in energy efficiency equipment for a company, say a garment factory, and that company will own the energy efficiency equipment and then sell and then share the savings over, say, 8 years with, say, that garment factory. And what that does is allow investment to reduce energy consumption, save money for both the garment factories but also for the financial investment that they make. So risk can be the most expensive part about financing. So having some of the great policies that the government are putting out means that that risk can be managed and then investment can flow. And then we will get more and more innovations.
All right. That sounds promising. We're running out of time now. And I'm going to ask Nick and all of you to share maybe your last thought. What do you think? What's the takeaway from the audience, particularly the younger generation who are following our program? What's your takeaway from that, Nick?
I see this great policy opportunity. So I see this dynamism, this innovation, but I also see a government very focused on a clear development path. And then I think we put that together. NCSD is very well placed. In fact, it was created to liaise between governments to look at sustainable development. This is a great policy opportunity, and now we should seize it. It's got all sorts of benefits for us. It crowds in private investment, it boosts growth, it brings in new technology, and it also, when we think about Cambodia becoming an upper middle income country, becoming even a high income country, it also puts us on a sustainable path where emissions are low, and that's environmental benefits for everybody.
No?
I fully agree that it's important, policy, but again, in addition to that, technology, I think it is an opportunity for Cambodia to leapfrog this traditional, very carbon intensive, fossil fuel based technology as well. Well, we like to compare it with smartphone, when we skip almost completely this, ugly phone booths, that dotted in most developed countries. Because once we put it here, it's become, how do you call it, a
Stranded asset.
For the next 30 or 40 years. And then we will lose opportunity. So this it's a kind of opportunity to leapfrog this quite polluting technology and embrace technology that is very clean, provides multiple benefit for the society.
Bridget,
what we find here in Cambodia is an incredible ability from the younger generation to innovate around technology. And when you combine that innovation around technology with clean energy, you can have incredible results. So that company I was talking to you about, that startup here in Cambodia, they're already looking to export their technology to Indonesia, and Africa is a massive market for them. So the innovations around bringing technology and solar together allow Cambodia to really work out how you integrate centralized systems that we have in place, fossil fuel plants. We have amazing hydro resources, and hydro you can manage. So variability in, say, solar can be managed by hydro. And so we can innovate around tariffs, and we can also innovate around business models, and we can also innovate around new technologies. And electric vehicles is just another step in the direction of managing a system across transport, across industry, across consumers.
Well, Bridget, Malog, Nick, thank you so much for coming and share this very exciting field, which I think will be a major, I don't want to use the word revolution, but a major boost into Cambodia economic development and put Cambodia on the map again. Hopefully we'll, like you say, we will skip the learning curve, we will catch up with the neighbor. And I want to close by saying one thing, that I was recently attending the ASEAN Summit in Singapore. And this year, Cambodia chaired the AIA Task Force, the Initiative for ASEAN Integration. And it's interesting that in the report, we see that the goal of the initiative is to help the reduce the development divide between the advanced ASEAN and the newcomer, right? The gap is closing very fast. So with the renewable energy being as another component of this catching up, I hope that Cambodia and other country, particularly the CLMV, could catch up with neighbor and make ASEAN as a whole, a strong community, a resilient community. And Bridget, you keep saying about innovation, because Singapore theme this year is all about smart city innovation. So Bridget, thank you so much. Malog, it's a pleasure to see you. Nick, as always, thank you. Well, I'm not going to bother summarizing. There's so much we have discussed. I just hope that you learn something about it and you start putting your mind to it. And for those who are in business, the entrepreneur, embrace that, And for government official, of course, we hope that you will help Punlok develop a good policy, And Nick, of course, you got to mobilize a development partner to help Cambodia achieve this potential. So on that note, good night, and I'll see you next week.